Next up, we have Rayouf Alhumedhi, a designer and advocate who proved that an individual can drive global change. At just 15 years old, she led the charge to create the Hijab Emoji, along with the founder of Reddit. Crochet for better representation in digital spaces. The work has been recognized by Apple and the Unicode Consortium, and she's continued shaping the conversation around inclusivity and in tech and design. And today, she's going to share her journey about how she turned a simple yet powerful idea into a reality that impacted millions. Rayouf, welcome to the stage.
Hi everyone, it's so lovely to be here today. I'm excited to chat design, interfaces, and how you too can play a small role in representation through design. So to start off, I would love to, let me see. Okay, there we go. I'd love to first ask the simple question, what even is design? A lot of us have preconceived notions, it's aesthetics, it's colors, there's also designing systems, but what was repeatedly shoved down my throat in design school at Stanford was this framework, which said that these three characteristics coming together represent design innovation. These characteristics included desirability, which is, does anybody really want the product? How much of a need is it? Feasibility, can you actually make the product? And then viability, is it scalable? I want to push back on this framework that, again, was repeatedly taught to me, and just ask the simple question of what happens when you pursue just for the sake to pursue, not with an end goal, not with scalability, not to have an exit, just like pursue that nature. And I think my own framework has led me to believe that this unfiltered pursuit of creation can result in a little bit of discomfort. So if you recognize this spot on the left side, I apologize, but it's from The Design of Everyday Things, Dan Norman's book, and it describes a discomfort that could come when you don't thoughtfully design. But I actually want to push back and say there's actually something interesting about an object that doesn't work how it's supposed to. You see the spout and the handler on the same side, and I think that's an example of discomfort through function. But I'm also, for today and my story, excited to think about what does discomfort through form look like? And I think some examples that I personally love of discomfort through form, these are two images from a photographer called Pierre Cernay. He took these photos in 2002 and brought traditional Japanese tea sets across the world in environments that don't necessarily make sense. And I think my favorite one is in New York City. And there's a little bit of a pause when you look at it. It feels a little bit strange, but at the end of the day, it's so beautiful. So with all that in mind, and as I talk about discomfort, let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Rayouf. I'm an investor, more recently thinking about the future of design and AI. But before that, I was a designer, and I still pursue design in so many different forms. And I grew up in Saudi Arabia. That's where I was born. I moved around between Germany and Austria, and I think very luckily for me, throughout all of it, I was surrounded by people from different cultures, different communities. So it almost felt like the norm to talk about where you're from. And I think it's something that really fed into my story. So some of the things I designed include tables. This is a living table that has flowers in the middle that grows with you. And as it dies, you can put the petals on the side. I designed shoes at Adidas. This is a shoe inspired by the desert a few years back. And then I also wrote about the design of shoes with Doc Martens. But before all of that, my understanding of design came in a very unassuming way. An emoji. This is like the original form of emoji that exists. It's called an emoticon. It was introduced in 1982. And if you're a lover of human-computer interactions, you probably would love the history with this. It initially existed as a form to communicate emotions you can't necessarily share via text. And you have the smiley face in its most bare bones form. And I saw that as an interesting medium. Emoji, everyone uses them. They're almost so simple, you don't give it a second thought. And I thought that was actually the most phenomenal medium that could exist for what I wanted to do, which is create the headscarf emoji. Keep in mind, in 2016, when I proposed the Hijab emoji, I was living in Berlin. It was at the height of the refugee crisis, and unfortunately also the height of extreme Islamophobia. These ads were commonplace. This one specifically says, "Stop Islamization," and they had pictures of women wearing the niqab. So it was almost an expectation that I would leave the house and get some stairs of some sort. And it frustrated me because it deeply misaligned with my lived reality. And I'm sure many of our lived realities as Muslim women or as women who know people that wear the headscarf, it didn't represent the mishurf that I was in. And I decided to do something about it and contacted Unicode Consortium. They're the magical organization that manage all the technical things on our keyboard, and they're actually really, really powerful. A lot of the tech companies really pay a lot of thousands of money to be a part of their voting process, because that's why a lot of people update their phones, is to get the new emoji, not necessarily because it's faster or it's better or any of that. So that's the organization that I set my proposal in, and this was the first rendition of the headscarf emoji. As you can see, it's very different than what you may have on your iPhones or Androids. And there was actually a lot of thought put into this when I was working with a graphic designer by the name of Alhumedhi. We wanted it to be neutral so that every vendor that is a part of Unicode Consortium can take it and do their own spin on it. And this is what the actual written proposal looks like. There's a guy also in a shema who didn't propose this, but it was just to give a whole picture image of what it could look like alongside different emojis. And I proposed this when Alexis Ohanian, the co-founder of Reddit, who played an incredibly important role in getting the story out there and to media outlets, because believe it or not, yeah, it's an emoji. Why is it such a big deal? But people were upset. A ton of people were upset. So having the backing of an influential figure in tech also gave it the credibility that I, as a 15-year-old Saudi in Berlin, could not get on my own. But if you're interested in the technical things of what makes an emoji proposal, you'll answer a bunch of different bureaucratic guidelines, these are the factors that would exclude the emoji if it was overly specific. So if I said a headscarf emoji that's purple with red stripes, they wouldn't accept that. So you have to have a general level of overarching high level in it. And then campaigning began. I took my dad to San Jose from Berlin. He thought this was all scams. Why are you going to share people was completely didn't make any sense. But I started campaigning, and I was again defending this with all my soul, because I was getting 40, 50-year-old journalists asking me questions like, isn't this a symbol of oppression? What does this represent? No. I didn't at the moment think that it was crazy to the power dynamics of asking this to a 15-year-old. All I wanted is to prove my story and say you are missing a big part of this representation, and you're honing in on this preconceived notion that, again, I don't believe in. So campaigning began. There was a sensationalist nature to it, of course, as there always is with Islam and Western media. And they picked it up and, said their own stories. And I honestly really appreciated the fact that I was able to stir some open dialogue and center the first time in a long time a Muslim woman in the story of the headscarf. So fast forward in 2016 to 2017, this is the emoji that was approved. And if you're at all interested, again, in the history of emoji, and I think, honestly, if you have any love for HCI, Human Computer Interaction Design, it's truly fascinating. All of a sudden, this single emoji is on billions of people's phones, and it feels again, like I said, so simple yet so powerful. I recommend you watch this movie, The Emoji Story, which details a few other emojis and how they came to be. And like I said, this emoji was also uncomfortable to many. The upset that occurred included hay bale sent to my home that started with, "You don't do anything to this world, you should go back to your country," a classic, we all know that one. And then others included from politicians who would repost it on their own social media pages, saying this was insanity. This, again, they claimed as a symbol of oppression. And I think what's interesting is the discomfort this occurred. So go back to the first point, is how can something so small cause discomfort through form? And I think it's because it's an object that to a lot of people exists out of context. It challenges people's preconceived notions. It challenges people's expectations of what they want a Muslim woman to look like, or what they want her to do. And for it to exist on their shiny, brand new phones and almost completely interacting with it all the time makes a lot of people uncomfortable. And also, it got me thinking about the role of clothes and fashion, what it means to wear this scarf every day, and the almost unintentional resistance you you hold in doing so. So fast forward to the last few years and what I've been working on. I've been working on Margins, which is a marketplace and media organization where we talk to brands around the world, think stories of skate in Nigeria, stories of graffiti in Saudi Arabia, and tell the stories of these designs. We hosted a pop-up in New York this summer, and I think the most memorable thing was people's recognition of, I would have never been able to access these stories. I didn't even know this type of activity or this engagement or this representation existed. Like, thank you for bringing it to the forefront. And I think, again, it really shows what you wear is such a symbol of what you value, your heritage, and what you think of. So I'm particularly excited for the talk with Tasneem about Vela and the story that came to be, because I think it's such an incredible conversation to have. But to quickly talk about the impact of one of the stories, we worked with WALF, a Nigerian skate brand, and one of their items, you see the clothing on the right, it's this pattern, and they made several patterns of it across different clothes. And this represents a traditional fabric in a lot of Western African countries called ashoibi. Excuse me if I mispronounced it wrong, but understanding how they brought it together to represent unity and family and love definitely stuck out to me. So, thinking about some of the things I think about today, I'm curious as well, like, hearing your own thoughts and maybe after this, like, where do you think discomfort in design exists today? I think a place that I'm confronted with a lot, and I think many people in tech, is AI. So if you look at these images, there are 3 images from a photographer named Sart Visuals on Instagram. All of these, when I look at each one individually, I actually feel moved by them. I see a photo of 2 older grandparents on a seesaw. I see brothers or friends on a motorcycle and a grandpa skateboarding. They elicit the similar feelings I feel when I look at art, and that feeling of representation and delight. But it's also AI generated. And it makes me question of, like, where does discomfort inform? Where is it invited? Where is it not? And how we think about it as individuals. And also, is discomfort the natural part of progress? And also, how do you honor traditions that we hold so valuable while also pushing the boundaries? And then lastly, I think what is so relevant to our discussion today is, as we think of all these tools, as we think of all these stories, what does it mean to design with representation in mind? When I proposed the headscarf emoji, it wasn't just to add something on the keyboard. It was for millions of young girls like me who are frustrated with the stories not being told to feel that representation. So I urge you to think about where in your daily work you could use design to empower, to include, because with that same power, you can also disinclude. So that's what I want to leave you both all with, is to think about the future of design, future of representation with all of the different facets everyone here is working with. So thank you so much.